Hey, this is Haley and welcome back to Bookshelf Bard. So today we're going to be discussing the much anticipated book, A Court of Silver Flames. And actually before it was released, I had just finished reading the 4 prior novels. And so I was pretty fresh in Sarah J. Maas's universe and I was pretty thoroughly up to date on all of the characters and their development so far. So I was really excited to see what Sarah J. Maas would do with Nesta's character and with her relationship with Cassian, which she had alluded to some weird tension, some sexual tension with them in the prior novels. So I was excited to see what she would do there. So let me start out by saying that I was more disappointed than anything to find out that Rysand is pronounced Rysand or Reese. And I originally thought that she had named him Rysand because it was shortened to Rise and he has wings. So I thought it was a play on words like Rysand. So I'm still disappointed that it's pronounced Rysand and Reese because I think that is extremely girly and it just didn't fit the character. But to each his own. So this book actually picks up a couple months, I believe, after the Battle of Hybern, and you're allowed to see it through the eyes of Nesta and how she's grappling with the acceptance of becoming High Fae, and then this cycle of depression and anxiety and PTSD that she has found herself in. On top of this mental health plotline, there's also a looming threat in the background of the alliance of the Human Queens, which were never really caught in the first trilogy. So you have that enemy in the background as well as Nesta and Cassian's development together. I was really excited to come back to the cast of characters that I love. It is a departure from the original trilogy in the fact that you're no longer witnessing the story through Rhys and Feyre's point of view. You're now following Nesta and Cassian, which I did enjoy seeing her character arc and her redemption throughout the series. I thought it was interesting and actually refreshing to view Rysand through the eyes of a character who was not utterly infatuated with him. Nesta hates Rhys. She hates him not only because he's High Fae, something that she has abhorred through her entire life, but she hates him because he's the savior, I think, for Nesta that she could never be. And she's come to resent Nesta because she was the one who took care of the family, and as the eldest child, I think Nesta incurred a lot of self-loathing for never being able to fulfill that role. So a lot of her self-hatred, self-loathing has come together and is aimed at Rysand for being this beautiful High Fae who's the savior and something she could never be when they were living in poverty. So it was refreshing to see negativity towards Rysand and his character. I really did enjoy the message that Sarah J. Maas was portraying in the fact that depression and PTSD can become this vicious cycle and it can disintegrate relationships if left unchecked, and how a cry for help may not be the conventional signs that we think depression is, that it might take the form of anger and distance and outbursts, and they're not the conventional signs and symptoms of mental health crisis that we're used to, but it allows that inside and outside perspective from the inner circle and then also from Nesta that she's crying for help, that she really does need the attention of her friends and family, but she won't let them get close to her. So I really did enjoy what Sarah J. Maas was trying to convey for mental health topics, and she has frequently said that this book means more to her in the fact that she has gone through a rough time and she felt close to the character of Nesta. I do think it's worth mentioning that just because you're going through a rough time in a mental health crisis, that doesn't exactly give you an excuse to just treat everybody like shit. Like, there's gonna be a point in your relationships with someone else where they just get fed up. Everyone has a breaking point. It doesn't excuse bad and negative behavior towards someone else if you are in a bad place mentally. Now, that person can be understanding and they can tolerate it up to a certain point, which I do think that the inner circle did, but it kind of ended up in this vicious cycle where Nesta hated everybody and was rude to everybody, and then in return the inner circle basically mirrored her behavior. So yes, I do think that all of the characters were flawed, but that doesn't necessarily make it a bad book or a bad storyline. It kind of just showed a realistic situation. If someone treats you like absolute trash, you're going to display the same behavior back to them. So, in terms of that negative criticism, I don't think it's really deserved. Like, everybody kind of treated each other terribly, and that's what happens in real life. I will send out a disclaimer that this book is the highest in terms of sexual content in all of the previous writing that I've read from Sarah J. Maas. I think a lot of the fans requested more and more sexual content and more explicit nature of the content. I can't say that I really enjoyed it for that. I liked more of the evolution of Nesta and Cassian's character together. I liked the exploration of the hunt for the Dread Trove. I thought that she needed to pay more attention to the adventure aspect of the book and weave the sexual and romantic content throughout that storyline. So I felt like I was reading two separate books. One for Nesta's mental health and sexual development, and then this small little section at the end for the Dread Trove and the final conflict between Briolin and Nesta and Cassian. So I wish there was more of the enemy versus heroes type instead of just the explicit content. I didn't mind it, like it was okay, but it just didn't really add to the storyline like I had hoped it would. Another point of action in the book is as you're trying to follow the fight to find this Dread Trove that Briolin, one of the human queens, also is looking for, you find out that Feyre is expecting a baby with Rhysand. And while I do think that she made the choice that she wanted to have this baby, I think a lot of the negative criticism over the fact that she's having a child is undeserved. I think that a feminist rhetoric has warped our perspective of childbirth to almost believe it's a burden and that it's some duty that's thrust upon us. It was Feyre's choice and an ultimate gift to Rhysand that she was going to have this child. I think that women should rejoice in their strengths, and I think that if it is a woman's choice, it is the ultimate self-sacrifice and the ultimate selfless gift to have a child with their partner. So I don't think that negative criticism is deserved. Like, that was her ultimate act of love for him. I asked my husband if we were going to have a child and that child would kill me, because that's the ultimate crux of the situation, is that this baby that Feyre is going to have, her pelvis is not sized appropriately for this baby with wings. So I asked him if we were going to have a baby and that baby was going to kill me because I couldn't birth it appropriately, would you tell me? Or would you allow me to enjoy those last few months in peace and free of anxiety? And he kind of said, you know, I don't know because we're not in that situation, but he would lean more towards not telling me because he wouldn't want me to be burdened with that anxiety. So I really don't know if I would want to be told that I was going to die at the end of my pregnancy. Because I think hope is what Rhysand was holding on to. I think that hope can be a powerful thing, and I think it can be a dangerous thing. And in terms of this situation, I think he let hope overpower his judgment. I think he was so set on finding a cure, finding some kind of spell work that could improve their situation, that he let that go on too long and he didn't tell Feyre. People really expected this book to be some essay over feminism and championing women's rights. And like, come on guys, be realistic. This is adult fantasy. This is fairy smut. Like, come on, like lower your expectations. Like, just read something for the fun of reading it. It doesn't have to have these deep messages hidden throughout every layer of the novel. Sometimes just enjoy a book for the fantasy that it is. Now, do I think that she wove mental health issues throughout the storyline? Yeah, I do think that. And I think that you can enjoy something just for what it is. So now on to what I feel is the major criticism for me for the book. At the end almost of the novel, at almost the height of the climax of activity, you have the three girls, Nesta, Emery, and Gwen, find themselves transported into the blood ritual, which the blood ritual is how the Illyrian warriors basically prove they're worthy of manhood and becoming a warrior in the army. So they've trained their entire lives for this moment, this one moment to prove themselves. They've lived in these harsh conditions. Their entire livelihood is centered around battle and being a warrior. And these three girls are suddenly in this competition to survive the week in these harsh conditions. And the whole point is basically to kill one another and survive. They've spent maybe a couple months up to a year training, and they find themselves up against all of these warriors and with friendship bracelets to find one another, and they somehow make it. They somehow make it to the peak of Mount Ramael, which Sarah J. Maas frequently reiterates that only 3 other warriors in the entire Illyrian history have made it to this point. So already it's unbelievable that these 3 girls who've barely trained in comparison to the other warriors make it to this point. And then not only do they do that, but the 2 girls go on to touch the stone at the peak, which is going to transport them back. But then Nesta stands single-handedly, stripped of her powers, where she has to battle this group of male Illyrian warriors by herself. So she does it. She basically ends up somehow battling them all, and she overcomes the situation, but it's not logical. And that's when Cassian and the last queen, the last human queen, Briolyn, shows up for the final battle. So I didn't care, honestly, that Briolyn and Cassian showed up at the last minute. I was okay with that part of the climax and the action. I just wasn't okay with these 3 girls who have barely trained at all to somehow overcome against all odds and be the only other people in history to touch the peak. Like, it just didn't logically make sense. I am disappointed that Nesta's powers weren't explored more in depth. I thought it was such a shallow excursion into what her powers could do. And I hated that at the end of the novel, she basically gave up her power to say, which I know it was to save Feyre and the baby in the ultimate form of self-sacrifice and the ultimate curve and arc in her redemption. But still, I hated that she had to do that, which I know that she kept some of it, or the mother allowed her to keep some of it within herself. So hopefully that will be enough to explore it in the further novels. And you know who I felt sorry for? The character Lucian, who had to sit there almost through the entire novel for his mate, who he sacrificed his home, his friendship for her, and she blatantly ignores him through the entire novel and obviously shows a preference for Asriel. So I hope that she furthers their relationship or just breaks it off entirely. I think that Asriel and Elaine would be a better match, but hopefully in the next novels she can give us a better explanation for why she did what she did. And I am interested to see what she's going to do with Elaine's character. I thought that she's come a little bit more into her own, and I do like her. I think that she's been kind of neglected in character development so far. So like I said, I'm excited to see where Sarah J. Maas takes it. One of the last things I want to say is that the best character award goes to the sentient house that took care of Nesta throughout the entire series. And I loved it because it fed her, it made sure she had bubble baths, and it also provided her smutty books, which what else can you ask for in a friend? So the sentient house was my absolute favorite character. I do think that Sarah J. Maas actually missed a huge opportunity to provide further depth to one of the characters. I thought that Rhysand was providing distance to Nesta, but also taking care of her. I thought that he was showing in his own way that he was there for her. So I think that she could have gotten around a lot of the negative criticism of Rhys's character by making it him that was caring for Nesta, making sure she had books and clothing and food, but giving her that space that people need whenever they're going through a rough time mentally. So I think that was a huge missed opportunity. I really do. I still love this mainly because it was in the universe that I've come to know and love, and I was reunited with a cast of characters that I've grown so close to. I feel like I was able to see the inner circle in a little bit more detail. But I was ultimately left with a little bit of disappointment. Like, I slogged through that whole book just to get that little bit of action at the end. Like, I love the exploration of the Dread Trove. I love the action in terms of the conflict with Briolyn and the alliance of human queens. but it was such a small portion of such a large book. And I know she's setting it up for the next novels and the next major villain, which is Keshi or Koshi. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but he's this death god that is ultimately probably going to be the next major antagonist in the novel. So I'm glad I read this book, if only for the bridge that it will be to connect me to the other series. Do I think it's worth it? Like, it was good. Like, I still liked it, but there were a lot of negative things that I had to say about it too. So hopefully she can redeem herself a little bit in the next few novels. I'm still gonna read them because I still love the characters, and hopefully we'll go back to Reese and Feyre, who are my absolute favorite. Hopefully you enjoyed today's video. Next week I'm probably going to be tackling the Grishaverse and the trilogy Shadow and Bone, which Netflix just released the new teaser trailer. So I'm super excited to see what they'll do with Leigh Bardugo's universe. So thanks so much for tuning in.